All right, let's get right into it. We're going to look at how just one single word in ancient texts might have been mistranslated for centuries. And, according to the sources we're looking at, correcting it could completely flip our understanding of time, judgment, and, well, the fate of everyone. It's a question that sounds kind of crazy, right? Eternal life. It seems pretty self-explanatory. But what if the original Greek word didn't mean forever at all? What if it meant something totally different? Something that happens inside of time, not outside of it. And look, this isn't just some dusty academic debate. The folks behind this research are really clear. They say the consequences of this one little mistranslation are, and I quote, huge. They argue it's a single point of error that has thrown off the understanding of millions. So, where does all this start? Well, it all kicks off with one single point of translation. The entire argument hangs on this idea that two words we all think we know, eternal and eternity, are just, well, wrong. They aren't what the original authors wrote. So here's the core idea. The original Greek word is aionios. The argument is that this word should actually be translated as eonian. For centuries, though, it's been translated as eternal. Now, why? The sources suggest that maybe early translators were influenced by Greek philosophy, ideas about a timeless, formless eternity, and they kind of projected that idea onto the text. But that one swap from Eonian to eternal paints a completely different picture of reality. And believe me, the difference between these two words is like night and day. Eternal suggests something totally timeless, existing completely outside of time, no beginning, no end. But Eonian, which comes from the word eon, means something else entirely. It's about a specific, finite period of time, a long era or an age. One is outside of time, the other is a distinct chunk of time. So what is an eon exactly? Think of it like a world age. It's a long stretch of time where the whole world system, the cosmos, is set up and operates in a very specific way. It has a definite beginning, a middle, and an end, and each one is marked by these huge, world-changing events or judgments. So what happens when you make this one little change from eternal back to Eonian? It's not just a definition swap. According to these sources, it unlocks an entire divine timeline. A whole structured plan for the cosmos that was supposedly hiding in plain sight this whole time. So, how's this plan structured? It's all built around this number, 5. But, 5 what? 5 eons, 5 distinct world ages that in this framework map out God's entire plan from start to finish. You've got the first eon, a perfect world before a big disruption. The second is the ancient world, kicking off with Adam and ending with the flood. The third? That's our time, the present wicked eon. Then there's a fourth, a future age of restoration, often called the millennium, and finally the 5th eon, the grand finale, the new heavens and new earth. Each age is separated by a massive, world-altering judgment that basically resets the board for the next phase. Okay, so let's take a quick tour of how this timeline actually works. To really get a feel for the story it tells, let's just highlight a couple of these ages, where we came from and where we are right now. This is the 2nd eon, what the source texts call the ancient world. This is the age when humanity first shows up on the scene. But they're not alone, and some pretty wild stuff starts to go down. So during this eon, a group of angels called the Watchers supposedly came down to Earth, had kids with human women, and their offspring were known as the Nephilim. Yeah, giants. This led to massive corruption, and the eon wraps up with that famous water judgment, Noah's flood, which basically wiped the slate clean for the next age. And that brings us to today, right now. According to this framework, we are living in the 3rd of these 5 eons, an age that's actually described in the source texts as the present wicked eon. The huge pivotal event of our age is, of course, the cross of Christ. Geographically, this is the eon of separate continents, which is different from the single landmass of the age before. And just like the other eons, our current age is set to end with catastrophic judgments, only this time it's by fire. These judgments, the sources claim, will pave the way for the 4th eon, and then ultimately the 5th and final eon, where the whole plan finally reaches its ultimate goal. So, after all these ages, all these judgments, all these massive cosmic shifts, what's the point of it all? This brings us to the biggest consequence of that one-word translation, the grand finale of this entire 5-eon plan. And here it is, the huge consequence. If Eternian punishment isn't eternal punishment, if it's just punishment that lasts for an age or an eon, then that means it has an end.
The ultimate goal of God's entire plan, in this interpretation, is an endless punishment for some, but universal salvation for absolutely everyone.
The source material really doesn't mince words here. It states it as a fact. At the end of time, when the eons are all wrapped up, every single person will be saved. The plan doesn't end with failure for anyone, it ends in total success for all. So, how does this all play out? The sources lay out a really clear sequence of events. First, the very last enemy, death itself, is completely destroyed. Then, all of creation is vivified, which means they're all given immortal life. After that, the Son hands the now fully reconciled kingdom over to the Father, basically saying, mission accomplished. And that final state, the absolute end of the whole thing, after all 5 eons are done, is described with this simple but really profound phrase: God is all in all. It means total, complete reconciliation between the Creator and every single part of creation. Nothing and no one is lost. Which brings us right back to where we started. Now, whether you buy this interpretation or not, it's a pretty powerful example of how one single word, filtered through centuries of translation and tradition, can build entire worldviews. Kind of makes you wonder, right? What else might be lost in translation?